Welcome aboard of Viajero, Travel with Passion, where we embark on journeys that inspire the soul. I'm your guide, Sam Waters, and together we'll uncover Europe's hidden gems, share unforgettable experiences, and dive deep into the heart of travel. Join me on an adventure in this podcast, which will leave you inspired, informed, and ready to explore on your own. Let's make every voyage a story worth telling. Bon voyage! Lisbon, Portugal, Episode 2 Exploring. In the second episode, I'll tell you more about how to explore Lisbon, what to do and see, as well as to discover which monuments and places in the city you can't avoid. I also tell you how to travel through this metropolitan city and how you get the most local experience during your trip, as well as some typical tourist traps and things to avoid. Believe me, once you have been to the city of Lisbon, Lisbon will never let you go. So listen to this second episode of the podcast Travel with Passion, Lisbon Inside Tips, to get all the Lisbon inside tips and tricks, as well as prepare yourself to discover why it is Lisboa and not Lisbon. Travel at your own pace. Travel with passion through Lisbon. When we have it about exploring Lisbon, we have to start with the monuments and history of this city, because when you walk through Lisbon, you see and feel the history at almost any square and behind every street corner. Lisbon has more than 50 monuments and museums to admire and to discover. So there is something for everyone, no matter if you are interested in history, arts, music, technology or sport. You say it, and most likely Lisbon has some options for you. First of all, central in the historic city center, you find the train station Rossio, which has a neo-Manueline build style. Neo-Manueline is a newer version of the typical Portuguese late Gothic build style, called Estilo Manuelino. Also in Baixa you find the Igreja São Domingos, which was part of a convent. This church survived some earthquakes and fires. The last fire was in 1959, and you still see all the marks of it in the church, which gives the church a gloomy and ghostly effect. This makes the Igreja São Domingos a must-visit in Lisbon. While another reminder of the earthquake of the 1st November 1755 is the Convento do Carmo, located at Largo do Carmo. It is known as the church without a roof. This convent is located next to the Cartel do Carmo, which was a crucial place in the final moments of the Carnation Revolution of 25 April 1974. Now the Cartel do Carmo is a police museum. The impressive Santa Justa elevator connects the Largo do Carmo with Baixa, while at the other side of the city stands the castle proud in the city, o Castelo São Jorge. This castle played a crucial role in the reconquest of Lisbon on the Moors, because the legend tells that the knight Martin Moniz saw that a door of the castle stood a little bit open. He wedged himself into the crack to open the door completely. In this way, Martin Moniz let the other soldiers into the castle, allowing the castle to be taken by the Christians. This led to the fall of Lisbon under the Moorish rule, and the square where you can take the famous tram 28 is named after this knight, Martin Moniz. A little bit further, you find the Panteão Nacional, with the last resting place of some famous Portuguese people like Fadista Amália Rodrigues and football player Eusébio. Also the church and monastery of São Vicente Fora are located here. The monastery houses the tombs of the House of Bragança, which was the most important Portuguese royal family. Be there on a Tuesday or on a Saturday, because these days there is a large flea market behind the Pantheon. This is a really must-do to pass your time and escape for a moment from the typical touristy things to do in Lisbon. Again, on the other side of Lisbon, you can go to the Taimot market, which is an ideal place to be for foodies in Cais do Sodré. The Taimot market is a food market, also known as Ribeira market. When you enter this hall, on the right side they sell fresh vegetables, while on the left side you can enjoy dishes from the best chefs and restaurants in Portugal, because it's a culinary struggle to be allowed to have a stand on the Ribeira market. Also in Cais de Sodré, you can take the ferry to the other side of the river and visit Ponto Final and Cristo Rei. Portugal got this copy of this big Christ statue of Rio de Janeiro as a plea in Fatima to keep Portugal out of World War II. What also happened? Cristo Rei is the statue of Christ which protects the city of Lisbon. The hands of Christ embrace the city, which makes it different from the statue in Rio de Janeiro. Some more interesting monuments and museums are located in the neighborhood Belém. In Belém, you find the impressive Jeronimus Monastery. This monastery is a typical example of the Manueline build style, the Portuguese late Gothic build style. The Manuel build style is a combination of European Gothic, Moorish elements and a typical Portuguese elements. It was King Dom Manuel I who introduced this build style. The Jeronimus Monastery is also the home of the famous Pastéis de Belém, elsewhere known as the Pastéis de Nata. These are the famous Portuguese custard tarts made from eggs, milk and flour. Now you can enjoy the original Pastéis de Belém in a pasteleria a little bit further, called Pastéis de Belém. In the church of the monastery you also find the tombs of the great navigator Vasco da Gama and the great Portuguese poet Luís de Camões. Vasco da Gama is known for the maritime discoveries to India, while Luís de Camões was an important poet about the Portuguese language and Portuguese community. In the Jeronimus Monastery you also find the Navy Museum, the museum to learn more about the Portuguese maritime discoveries. Now we go more to the Tagus River in Belém, and there you find the Torre de Belém. This tower is also an example of the Manuel build style, o estilo manuelino, and was a defensive fortress for the city of Lisbon. And there would have been a same tower at the other side of the river, but that one is gone. It is possible to enter this Belém tower and go to the top deck, but according my personal experience, it is more interesting to visit the Padrão dos Descobrimentos and go upwards over there. The Padrão dos Descobrimentos is the monument for the discoverers. On both sides of this Padrão, you see all the people who were important for the huge Portuguese maritime discoveries, with in front Dom Infante Henriques. Dom Infante Henriques was the person who made it possible to make the Portuguese overseas discoveries, but he was not a great traveler. And when you stand on top of the Padrão dos Descobrimentos, you get a nice overview over the world map in front of this monument, a view over the whole Jeronimus Monastery and sights to the Belém Tower and the red 25 April Bridge with Cristo Rei at the other side of the river. This is why I find that the view on top of this monument is more worth it compared to a visit inside the Belém Tower, because the Belém Tower is very overcrowded and with very small stairs to go upwards. Also in Belém you can visit the National Coach Museum and the Carriage Museum. This last one is a museum about the public transport in Lisbon. And don't miss the Experience Center Quake. There you can learn more about earthquakes and the devastating earthquake of the 1st November 1755, ideal to get a feeling about what happened at that moment in Lisbon. And to learn a lot more about the history of Lisbon and Portugal, you can visit the Lisboa Story Center in the historic city center of Lisbon itself, at Praça do Comércio. When you look around you in Portugal, you also see wonderful painted tiles at the walls of the buildings, mostly in white and blue, sometimes with yellow, and they are telling a story. These tiles are called azulejos and they are typical Portuguese because they are used to tell a story but also to protect the walls of the buildings against the saltiness of the Atlantic Ocean. If you want to learn more about these tiles, I suggest to visit the Azulejo Museum, the National Tile Museum. Maybe some less famous but also interesting monuments in Lisbon are Campo Pequeno, Chafaris del Rei, the Palacio da Ajuda, and Palacio da Fronteira. Or in case you like futebol, then a tour through the Stadio da Luz of Benfica or Stadio da Avalada of Sporting Clube de Portugal are worth your visits. The last one I want to tell about is Parque das Nações. This is the newer part of the city and was built for the World Expo of 1998. But all the buildings are still in use, so you can still visit a science museum, the Aquarium Oceanario, or take the telecabin over the Tagus River. And you also get a view over the longest bridge in Europe, the Vasco da Gama Bridge. So I can stay talking about monuments and museums to visit and discover in Lisbon, but I think it's now up to you to inform you further about what all is possible and interests you. Here you've got already a good impression. But before I go further with how to travel through Lisbon, I also want to tell you something about the Lisboa cards. The Lisboa card is a great city card when you make a city trip to Lisbon. The card includes a lot of discounts and free entrances at different monuments and museums in and around Lisbon. You can buy this card for 24 hours, 48 hours, or 72 hours. And what also is great about this city card is that it includes free public transport during the active period of the card. Get all the information about the Lisboa card via the link in the description of this episode. Now that I told you about the free public transport available with the Lisboa card, I come to the next part of this episode. In this next part, I'll tell you more about how to travel through Lisbon. Most tourists arrive in Lisbon via the international airport. From the airport, it is easy to reach the city center by bus, metro, or taxi. When you travel only with hand luggage, the bus is a good option. Bus line 744 brings you from the airport to Restauradores in the historical city center of Lisbon. But Lisbon also has a great and easy to use metro network. The Metro of Lisbon has 4 lines in 4 different colors and each with a symbol. Each line crosses another line at only one point. So this makes it very easy to find which line you have to take to reach your destination. And you buy your tickets at the terminals in the metro station. There you get a rechargeable card for 50 cents and you can add day tickets or single tickets on it. The rechargeable card is valid for 1 year and can also be used for bus, tram and elevators in the city of Lisbon. Even the ferry and some train lines are possible, so you can use the same card for your whole trip. But keep in mind that you need 1 card per person. It's also cheaper to use these cards instead of buying your tickets from the driver on the bus, tram or funicular. So when you plan to take the bus line 744 from the airport to the city center, also first go to the entrance of the metro station and buy your rechargeable card and tickets over there before you take the bus. As already told, public transport is included for free in a Lisboa card, also from the airports. So when you bought a Lisboa card, you can already use the Lisboa card to travel from the airport to the city center. But when you do that, keep in mind that the card is activated at that moment, and so the period to use your Lisboa card is already started. Now that you have arrived in the city center of Lisbon, there are 2 great options to travel throughout the city. You can go for walking or take public transport. Of course, taxi, Uber, Bolt are also possible, but these are all private transport and not as ecological and cheap as public transport or walking. And as told before, Lisbon has a great public transport network. Because Lisbon is built on 7 hills, it is a very hilly city. But through the many narrow streets and picturesque vibes, Lisbon is still a great city for walking, especially walking through Alfama and Mureria, where you walk through a labyrinth of small streets with cobblestones. If you walk through these neighborhoods, you still feel the real atmosphere of Lisbon. There you discover why Lisbon doesn't exist, but it is Lisboa. Due to the small street stones, sidewalks in Lisbon can become very slippery, also when it has not rained for a long period. This means that when you travel to Lisbon, wearing good shoes is very crucial. Good, comfortable shoes, ideal for walking. I say it for your own comfort. Avoid flip-flops, and especially for women, avoid high heels. If walking in a hilly city like Lisbon is not very easy for you, or you want to travel over a longer distance in a faster way, then you can use public transport. As I told, public transport in Lisbon is a great option. Bus, metro, tram, elevator and funicular, everything is possible in this wonderful city. I already told that Lisbon has a great metro network and easy to use, and it's also the best place to buy your tickets for public transports. And also the best place to buy your tickets for public transport is in the metro stations or train stations. You can use these tickets for metro, bus, tram, elevator and funicular. Also ideal if you want to take the bus or a tram for a day trip to Belém, or to take a funicular like Elevador da Gloria, Elevador da Bica, Elevador da Lavra or Elevador da Graça. Also for the Santa Justa elevator and the old city trams, you can use these rechargeable cords. Very easy and cheap. But I have to tell you something about these last two ways of transport. The Santa Justa elevator and the old city tram 28 have a long waiting queue, and they are not really worth the long waiting time in the queue, because the Santa Justa elevator has a ride of a few seconds, while you can also reach the same viewpoint by walking around via the Largo do Carmo. This walk is free and without a long waiting queue. At Martin Moniz you can take old city trams for a ride through the city. But keep in mind, these trams are not intended as a tourist attraction, but are public transport to bring locals from one point to another. Due to the very narrow and hilly streets, long trams can pass these streets, so the older trams are more ideal to ride through these streets. And this is why they use the older, short trams. The most popular old city tram by tourists is the tram 28. At Martin Moniz you can wait hours in a queue to take this tram, while there are other options available to enjoy a ride in an old city tram in Lisbon. One of the other options is to go for a ride early in the morning, when most tourists still sleep or still are taking their breakfast. Another option is to take tram 28 in the other direction. So don't start in the city center at Martin Moniz, but start at Campo Ourique. Another thing to avoid in Lisbon is taking a tuk-tuk. You find them everywhere, almost at every square. But first of all, tuk-tuks are no way of transport. They are guided tours through the city, and they are not cheap, and also not typical Portuguese. A tuk-tuk is something from Asia, not from Portugal. So, if you want a real Portuguese experience, avoid the tuk-tuks. Locals in Portugal walk through the city and are a big fan of taking the bus. Again, because Lisbon is a hilly city, another must-do in Lisbon are visiting as many viewpoints as possible. Almost every neighborhood is built around a hill and has at least one great viewpoint over the city and the river, eventually as a rooftop. And most of the viewpoints are free, and there is a kiosk to eat and drink something. The Portuguese word for viewpoint is miradouro. Some of the most wonderful and popular viewpoints in Lisbon are Miradouro Portas do Sol, Miradouro Santa Luzia, Miradouro da Graça, Miradouro Santa Catarina, and Miradouro São Pedro de Alcantara. But also the castle has a great viewpoint over the city, but you have to enter the castle. While the viewpoint on the most top hill of Lisbon is Miradouro Nossa Senhora do Monte. Also the Arco da Rua Augusta has a nice viewpoint where you have a great view over Praça do Comércio with the Tagus River, Baixa, and the Alfama. This viewpoint is not free, but worth your visit. And this brings us back to Praça do Comércio, the largest square in Lisbon. Praça do Comércio and the old square, Terreiro do Paço, have always been a noble entrance to the city. So when you stand on this square and turn around to let all the impressions of this square come to you, you'll understand what I mean. Especially when you take a seat at the Colunas near the Tagus River. Besides the history and vibrant atmosphere, Lisbon is also a very green city. Discover a lot of gardens and parks in Lisbon. Some of them are the Eduardo Park, Jardim Amália Rodrigues, Jardim da Estrela, Botanical Gardens, and the Garden of Gulbenkian. Some other gardens are also impressive viewpoints, like Jardim da Cerca de Graça and Jardim do Torel. Lisbon is also the city of the fado, which is a typical Portuguese music. Fado is a music genre to express the typical Portuguese way of living, a saudade. Important characteristics of fado are melancholy, hope, happiness, love, sadness, and missingness. So most fado songs are sad, but there is also a lot of very happy and amusing fado music. The cradle of the fado is in Moraria, on the walls of the castle. Moraria is known as the berço do fado and the home of great fadistas like Maria Severa, Fernando Mauricio, and Marise. While in Alfama you find the most fado houses and the fado museum. But to really learn what fado is, you have to go to a fado house in Alfama or Moraria. In the episode about gastronomy and where to eat, I'll tell you more about good fado restaurants in Lisbon. Finally, I also want to give you some alternative things to do and visit in Lisbon. In Alcantara you can visit Elix Factory and Village Underground. Both are built on a city of old factory buildings. They bring new life to these cities, with concept stores and young entrepreneurs. And if you're not afraid of heights, in that case Pillar Set is something for you. This is a pillar of the 25 April Bridge, which is an experience center where you learn more about this bridge. This bridge is a copy of the famous Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. And if you want a unique guided tour through Lisbon, then you have to go for the Hippo Trip. With this amphibious vehicle, you get a unique view through the city center and from the Tagus River. Ideal to do with children. Hippo hippo! And for shoppers, you have to go to the shopping centers of Colombo and Vasco da Gama. There you find a lot of shops, but also great restaurants where it's also possible to enjoy great food at affordable prices. But I tell you more about Portuguese gastronomy and how to find ideal restaurants in another episode. To end this episode, I will give you a last interesting tip about using money and payments. Lisbon is an international and metropolitan city, so paying with cards is mostly no problem. But there still are a lot of places where they only accept Portuguese debit cards, even at the airport, while using credit cards is mostly no problem. But cash is still also very common in Lisbon and the rest of Portugal. Cash is also easier for tipping. But to have cash, you have to withdraw money, And to withdraw money, use the ATM terminals with the letters MB of Multibanco. Avoid the terminals from Euronets, because these terminals charge you some extra costs to withdraw the cash, even if you use a European debit card, while the terminals of Multibanco don't charge you this extra. So it can save you a lot of money by using the correct ATM terminals. This was the second episode to tell you more about exploring Lisbon. For more information about Lisbon, take a look at the site lindoportugal.eu. And when you want to make a city trip, you also want to know where you want to stay. So in the next episode, I tell you more about what are the best places to stay in Lisbon. I also will give you some hotel tips. So keep listening to this podcast to travel with passion. Lisbon Inside Tips. Thank you for listening to this episode. Don't hesitate to give your review and subscribe to follow us. More travel information can be found on voyagero.io. Bye bye until the next episode or podcast.